If you want to get ahead in this company, you need to be one of the boys. I'm not sure your lifestyle fits our executive culture, but hey, you're good with numbers, so I'll keep you around." Those were the exact words Richard Morrison used while denying my promotion for the third time in 2 years. What he didn't know was that I had started recording our meetings after the first rejection. What I didn't know was that those recordings would completely upend both of our careers within a year. My name is Ethan Pierce, and I'm a 32-year-old finance analyst at Meridian Capital, one of Chicago's fastest-growing investment firms. I came to Meridian 5 years ago with a Harvard MBA and a track record of successful risk analyses at my previous job. I was ambitious, hardworking, and yes, I happened to be gay. Growing up in a small town in Michigan, I had learned early to compartmentalize my life. My parents, though they eventually came around, initially struggled with my coming out at 18. By the time I reached business school, I had mastered the art of being professionally neutral, neither hiding nor highlighting my sexuality. This approach had served me well, or so I thought. In my first position at a Boston consulting firm, it never seemed to be an issue. My mentor there, an older woman named Sarah, had once told me, "In finance, the only thing that should matter is if you can make money." I carried that belief with me to Meridian. For the first 3 years, my career progressed normally. I received consistent praise for my work, particularly my talent for spotting emerging market trends before our competitors. I managed a small team effectively and built a reputation for turning around struggling client portfolios. I was on track for senior management, with my supervisor at the time, Thomas, frequently mentioning me as his eventual successor. When Thomas announced his retirement, the office buzzed with speculation about who would take over our division. Most assumed it would be either me or Lisa Chen, another high-performing analyst. We both had the qualifications, the client relationships, and the respect of our teams. I even told Michael, my partner of 4 years, to be prepared for a celebration. Then came the announcement. Richard Morrison from the New York office would be taking over. The news landed like a stone in my stomach. Not because I knew Richard, but because I knew what this meant. An outsider had been brought in over qualified internal candidates. Still, I remained optimistic. Perhaps Richard would recognize the talent already in the department. Richard was an old-school banking executive with a reputation for being ruthless, but effective. At 53, he had silver-streaked hair, exclusively wore custom suits, and immediately moved into a corner office that he filled with golf trophies and photos of himself, with various celebrities and politicians. All men, I couldn't help but notice. Our first one-on-one meeting seemed to go well. Richard reviewed my portfolio performance, nodded appreciatively at the client retention statistics, and asked thoughtful questions about my risk assessment methodology. As we wrapped up, his demeanor changed slightly, becoming more casual. "So, Ethan, tell me about yourself." "Married?" he asked, leaning back. "No, but I have a partner. His name is Michael," I replied without hesitation. In 5 years at Meridian, I'd never hidden this fact, though I rarely volunteered it either. I watched Richard's expression shift almost imperceptibly before he quickly recovered with a tight smile. His eyes flickered down to the photo on my desk. Michael and I at his sister's wedding, then back to his papers. Great, he said, shuffling the documents. "That's all for today." The meeting ended abruptly, leaving me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite place. I dismissed it initially. Perhaps he was just busy or tired from his recent relocation. But within weeks, subtle changes began. I noticed I was no longer included on emails about client dinners. Reports I submitted sat in Richard's inbox for days before being reviewed, while others received immediate feedback. In meetings, my ideas were met with minimal acknowledgement, only to be praised minutes later when repeated by someone else, usually Jake Donovan, a recent hire who, I later learned, had played college football with Richard's son. I tried to address it directly. Richard, I noticed I wasn't invited to the Westlake client dinner. Was that an oversight? Oh, that, he replied casually. It was more of a sports thing. They wanted to talk football and golf. Didn't think it would be your scene. I follow the Bears, I said, referring to Chicago's football team, and I play golf every weekend. Richard looked genuinely surprised. Do you? Huh. Wouldn't have pegged you for a sports guy. These microaggressions continued. When a junior analyst made a homophobic joke in the break room and I spoke up, Richard pulled me aside afterward. Don't be so sensitive, Ethan. It was just locker room talk. The guys need to blow off steam sometimes. I swallowed my anger. It's not about sensitivity, Richard. It's about professionalism and respect. He patted my shoulder condescendingly. Sure. Just try to fit in a bit more, all right? Being part of the team is important here. When the senior analyst position opened up, I was the obvious choice based on performance metrics. I'd been preparing for months, updating our risk assessment models and bringing in 2 major clients. My colleagues even congratulated me in advance. Then Richard gave the promotion to Jake, who had been with the company less than a year. I requested a meeting to understand the decision. Richard's explanation was vague and contradictory. Jake's got the right presence for client-facing roles, he said, gesturing vaguely. You know, someone they can relate to over beers and golf. My client satisfaction scores are the highest in the department, I countered. Numbers aren't everything, Ethan. There's a certain rapport that's needed. You're excellent with analysis, and that's where your strength is. I left the meeting feeling dejected, but determined to work even harder. That night, I told Michael what had happened. This is clearly discrimination, Michael said immediately. He worked in HR for a tech company and recognized the patterns. You should document everything. Record your meetings with him. That seems extreme, I replied, uncomfortable with the idea. Ethan, you've been passed over for no good reason. Jake has a fraction of your experience and lower performance metrics. What other explanation is there? I resisted at first. Despite the setback, I wanted to believe in meritocracy, in the system. Maybe Jake really did have qualities I couldn't see. Maybe I needed to improve in areas I hadn't considered. Then came the Henderson account. It was a major opportunity, a family-owned business looking to diversify their investments before going public. I had researched their portfolio extensively and prepared a comprehensive proposal. The morning of the pitch, Richard called me into his office. I'm sending Jake to the Henderson meeting instead, he announced. What? But I've been working on that proposal for weeks, I protested. I know, and Jake will use your analysis. But Henderson is an old-fashioned family. Very traditional values. I think Jake will be a better fit. That was the moment I knew Michael was right. That afternoon, I downloaded a recording app on my phone and began documenting my interactions with Richard. Over the next few months, I collected dozens of subtle but unmistakable comments. The Miller account needs someone with a traditional approach. Let's put Jake on it. For the executive retreat, we're sharing rooms. I figured you wouldn't be comfortable with that arrangement. Your analysis is good, but it lacks a certain masculine confidence the board responds to. We need someone who can really be one of the guys for the Stevens pitch. You understand. Each time, Richard maintained plausible deniability. He never explicitly mentioned my sexuality, but the pattern was unmistakable. During this time, my work life became increasingly difficult. I was given the accounts no one else wanted. My annual bonus was noticeably smaller than my peers, despite my performance metrics. I began experiencing anxiety before work each morning, something I'd never felt before. Michael watched me struggling and grew increasingly concerned. You can't keep going like this, Ethan. It's affecting your health. I just need to prove myself, I insisted. You've been proving yourself for 5 years, he countered. This isn't about your performance. Then came my annual review meeting, when I was passed over for promotion a second time, despite bringing in the highest client retention rate in the department and successfully turning around 3 struggling accounts. "What more do I need to do, Richard?" I asked directly, my phone recording in my pocket. He leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. His guard seemed to drop a bit, perhaps because it was late and we were the only ones left in the office. "Look, Ethan, you're technically excellent. No one's denying that. But executive positions require a certain fit. Our clients expect a particular type of person representing the firm. If you want to get ahead in this company, you need to be one of the boys. I'm not sure your lifestyle fits our executive culture. But hey, you're good with numbers, so I'll keep you around." My hand trembled slightly in my pocket as I stopped the recording. I thanked him for his candid feedback and left his office with my career ambitions in tatters. At home, I played the recording for Michael. His face darkened as he listened. "That's textbook discrimination," he said firmly. "You need to take this to HR." "And then what?" I asked bleakly. "Even if they do something about Richard, which is a big if, I'll be labeled as the guy who complained. No one will want to work with me. My career here will be over." "Your career there is already stalled," Michael pointed out. "And you're miserable. What do you have to lose?" He was right. That night, I compiled all my recordings, along with notes documenting patterns of behavior, performance metrics showing my consistent achievements, and emails demonstrating how I was being sidelined. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with Diane Winters, the head of HR. Diane had a reputation for fairness and had implemented the company's diversity initiatives. I wasn't sure what would come of it, but I knew I couldn't continue this way. When I sat down in Diane's office, my hands were shaking. "I need to report ongoing discrimination," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. She maintained a professional expression. "That's a serious allegation, Ethan. Can you elaborate?" I explained the situation briefly, then played a selection of the recordings. As she listened, Diane's expression transformed from professional neutrality to barely contained shock. "Ethan, this is extremely serious," she said when I finished. "We have strict policies against discrimination. I'll need to escalate this to legal and the executive committee." "Will that make any difference?" I asked skeptically. "Richard seems pretty well connected." "More than you might think," Diane replied. "First of all, what he's doing is illegal. But beyond that, we've just secured Equality Capital as a major client. They're a diversity-focused investment fund, and they've made it clear they only work with companies that share their values. This kind of behavior puts that relationship at risk." She took detailed notes, made copies of my evidence, and assured me the matter would be handled confidentially. "In the meantime, document any further incidents. And Ethan, thank you for coming forward. It takes courage." Over the next 2 weeks, I continued working as usual, though I noticed Richard was suddenly assigning me to more significant projects. I later learned that Diane had informed him that a complaint had been filed, though my name wasn't mentioned. The atmosphere in the office grew tense. Richard became overly formal in our interactions, clearly suspicious. Several colleagues commented on the change, though I maintained professionalism and revealed nothing. Then, unexpectedly, I was called to a meeting with Vanessa Laurent, the CEO herself. My stomach twisted as I entered her minimalist office with its wall of windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Vanessa was known for her direct approach. She had transformed Meridian from a mid-tier firm to an industry leader in just 6 years. Rumors abounded about her management style. Some called her ruthless, others visionary. "Ethan, thank you for coming," she said, not looking up from the tablet in front of her. "I've been reviewing your file. Impressive performance metrics." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. She set down the tablet and looked at me directly. "I've also reviewed the evidence you provided to HR. I've listened to all the recordings." I swallowed hard, but maintained eye contact. First, I want to apologize for what you've experienced, she continued, her tone softening slightly. The behavior you've documented is completely unacceptable at Meridian. It contradicts our values and, frankly, is bad for business. I nodded, still unsure where this was heading. We've decided to restructure the department, she continued, her tone shifting to one of business efficiency. We're creating a new risk innovation division that will report directly to the executive committee. I'd like you to lead it. I stared at her in disbelief. The salary is a 40% increase from your current position, plus executive bonuses, she added, sliding a folder across her desk. The team will start with 8 analysts, growing to 15 by next quarter. I don't know what to say, I managed. Say yes, she replied with a small smile. Your analysis models have been outperforming traditional approaches for years. This division will build on that work, developing new risk assessment protocols for emerging markets and technologies. It's overdue, honestly. And Richard? I finally asked the question, weighing on my mind. Vanessa's expression hardened slightly. He's being reassigned. We value his expertise but recognize he needs significant adjustment to his management approach. He'll undergo extensive training and will report to the new division head. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. That would be you. I left Vanessa's office in a daze. By the end of the week, the restructuring was announced company-wide as a strategic initiative to better position Meridian for emerging markets. Most people accepted this explanation without question. The transition wasn't without challenges. Some colleagues, particularly those close to Richard, were skeptical of my sudden promotion. Jake avoided me entirely, but the majority of the team adapted quickly, especially as they realized the new division offered greater opportunities for innovation and advancement. 2 months later, I sat in my new corner office, reviewing quarterly projections. My team was performing exceptionally well, already exceeding the targets Vanessa had set. I had hired 2 promising analysts from other departments and implemented a more collaborative approach to project development. There was a knock at my door. Richard stood there, holding a file folder. He looked different. The swagger was gone, replaced by a careful formality. The Henderson analysis you requested, he said stiffly, placing it on my desk. Thank you, Richard. And how's the diversity training going? I asked pleasantly. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Enlightening, he replied. Excellent. Our new client expects our approach to be progressive and inclusive. I'm counting on your full support. Of course, he said, then hesitated. Your partner. Michael, right? I heard he's an event planner. We should consider his firm for our next corporate retreat. The gesture, though awkward, seemed genuine, a peace offering of sorts. I smiled. That's thoughtful, Richard. I'll let him know you mentioned it. After he left, I looked at the photo on my desk. Michael and me sailing on Lake Michigan last summer. I thought about how close I'd come to giving up, to accepting that I'd never advance beyond a certain level because of who I was. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard's discrimination had inadvertently propelled me past him in the corporate hierarchy. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about creating the environment I'd always wanted to work in. One where performance mattered more than perception, where diversity was valued rather than merely tolerated. That evening, Michael and I celebrated my first successful quarter as division head with dinner at our favorite restaurant. To justice, Michael toasted, raising his glass. To evidence, I countered with a smile. Are you still recording meetings? He asked curiously. No, but I've kept the files, I admitted. I hope I'll never need them again, but they're my insurance policy. Those recordings remind me that sometimes justice requires evidence, courage, and patience. They also remind me that the right thing to do isn't always easy, but it's always worth doing. The restructuring had broader effects than just my career. Meridian implemented more comprehensive anti-discrimination policies. Vanessa instituted quarterly anonymous surveys to monitor the company culture. And I began mentoring younger LGBTQ+ professionals in the finance industry, sharing what I'd learned. Last week, I hired 2 brilliant analysts who'd been overlooked at their previous firms. One was a woman returning from maternity leave. The other was a trans man with exceptional credentials, but a spotty employment history due to transition-related gaps. "Why take a chance on us?" the woman asked during her interview. "Because I know what it's like to be judged for who you are rather than what you can do," I told her. "And because I'm not taking a chance, I'm making an investment." As for Richard, he's adjusting. Slowly. There are moments when I catch glimpses of his old attitudes, but they're becoming rarer. Yesterday, I overheard him defending one of our new hires against a client's casual prejudice. Maybe people can change after all. But even if they can't, companies must. And sometimes, all it takes is one person with enough evidence and courage to speak up. And perhaps, a well-timed recording.